Heritage Preservation Committee meeting to order. Ms. Hanson, may we please have a roll call?
Absolutely. Davies?
Here.
Coleman? Kelly? Here. Matson? Morris? Here. St. John?
Here.
Welvert?
Here.
Great. So, missing one, great. That moves us on to item 3 on the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Yes.
And would anyone like to make a motion to accept the agenda?
So move.
Move.
I'll second.
Seconded, great. All, any additions to the agenda before we move forward? Great, so all in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All ayes, and motion carries to adopt this agenda. So that moves to item 4 on the agenda, the visitor presentation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak about something that's not already on the agenda tonight? No one? Seeing that no one is here to speak on anything new, we'll move on to item number 5, approving the Historic Preservation Committee meetings from October 30, 2018. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes?
Yes.
Yes, great. Great. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries to accept the minutes from October 30. We're moving on to item number 7. We're skipping 6 since there are no items on the consent agenda tonight. So for action items, the first is a public hearing for approval of a site alteration permit for demolition of the historic Hammer Saloon at 1092 Cardinal Street. Liz, would you please provide a presentation?
Nice job. Thank you, members of the HPC. We have a site alteration permit request tonight for the Hammer Saloon at 1092 Cardinal Street. This is specifically for demolition request tonight, although with some conditions attached that I'll get to. So to give you an understanding of where the site is, and I'm sure we've seen this multiple times now, but the Hammer Saloon is located on the Hammer's property at 1092 Cardinal Street. The structure itself, as there are multiple structures on the site today, is basically the one that fronts Cardinal Street, or is the closest one to Cardinal Street as you're coming down. So in terms of a background, and some of this will kind of be a refreshing from what we've heard before, and a couple new things since our latest meeting. But as you're aware, we've approved a concept plan for the Hammers property of 86 acres to be redeveloped as a residential active adult community. So that was approved in September of this year, and as a part of that, there is a historic building on the site that we've been addressing since September of this year, and we hopefully will continue to discuss that tonight and come to a conclusion on how to move forward with it. So the building, the Hammer Saloon, was locally designated in 1996. We believe it was built in 1873 or somewhere around that time frame. It was locally designated due to the history and a significant family occupying that structure, as well as being one of those buildings that operated a saloon out of it for community people coming up and down the hill in Chaska. So in 2004, the Hammers family did come forward with a demolition request, which was subsequently denied by the HPC based on that none of the findings that are applicable for a demolition were being met. So tonight we're coming forward with another demolition request with some conditions attached to it. based on kind of the new information and new people involved in this site since our last meeting. So our last meeting we had on October 30th of this year, and we basically had that meeting to reconvene on the site tour that we conducted at the Hammer Saloon, and to really get a direction from you guys on how to proceed forward. So at that meeting, you did request to get more information on what it would take to move the home, which the developer did consult with a local mover to get a value on that, and they did come to a conclusion or an estimate of $25,000 to $30,000 to actually move the home. That does not take into account other factors such as moving power lines or signs or other infrastructure that it might take to get it to a new location. And that also doesn't factor in what it would take to acquire a lot or an area for the actual home. That has not been figured out, so there really is no kind of direction in terms of getting the home relocated because we don't have a spot sanctioned off for it. You did also come to the conclusion that although the house that, is in very rough shape, you did still see value in trying to save it if someone is able to come forward and save it. A couple of these photos are just kind of refreshers of historic photos of the site when it was more in its original form. Some alterations have been done to the home since its original establishment in terms of a front porch being enclosed. The saloon door was removed on the front of the house. The first floor openings were consolidated from 2 to 1. Types of windows have been updated and so forth. So a couple pictures of how the house sits currently. So as you can see, it's in pretty rough shape. Just a couple photos that, if we need to, we can reference back to. The development plan that Pulte Homes has provided to the city is on this slide, and then the Hammer Saloon is kind of zoomed into in terms of where it fits within that development plan. So if we need a reference back to that, we'll have it there. So what we're coming forward to with tonight is a request to demolish the structure. So the developer does wish to redevelop the entire site, but they're still trying to get a clear direction from the HPC on how to proceed forward with this home. So they need some clear guidance at this point from the HPC on whether or not what's being presented to you tonight is viable. So specifically what's being proposed, and I've tried to break this down as clearly as I can. So the developer is coming in with a demolition permit. However, between the time of now up until June 1st of 2019, they will work to try to find an interested investor to preserve the home and solidify an agreement to find a use and work scope to restore the exterior of the home. So if they do find an interested investor within that time frame and a business and restoration plan is agreed to, then the developer will provide a lot that meets city standards and has city sewer and water free of charge to the investor for the location of the Hammer Saloon. The interested investor will have to come back to HPC for a site alteration in order to do any exterior work on the home. So you will be able to see this again if things do pan through with trying to save the home. So that will need to happen before that June 1st, 2019 deadline to stay on the developer's schedule of when they're hoping to move ground. So if an interested investor and a restoration plan is not agreed to and achieved by June 1st, 2019, then the developer is approved to demolish the Hammer Saloon and home. So what's occurred since our last meeting? We did have someone step forward whose name is Kirsten Case. She was also present at the last HPC meeting. She has stepped forward and has basically stated her interest in wanting to preserve the home and try to save it and get it back to working order, but also get it back to kind of its original look and aesthetic that once was as much as possible. So she has created an initial scope of work that was provided in your packet tonight in terms of kind of the cost estimates it would take to restore the exterior, but also to restore the interior to get it back to a residential use. So those numbers have been provided kind of for reference if we need it. So the developer and Kirsten have also had conversations since that time, and the developer is amenable to trying to work with this interested investor and trying to provide what they can to help save the home. So they have agreed to a timetable that would be comfortable for them to still stay on schedule with their development. And given that Kirsten can come up with a restoration plan for the exterior before June 1st, they are definitely amenable to working with them and providing them a lot to help accomplish that. So at this point, it's very much in the conceptual stages of what they're able to do out there, but we are in the midst of talking with our economic development team to see if there's any city funds available to help them with the restoration of the exterior. So those details still need to be worked out, but we do have some time to at least try to figure that out and see if we can move forward with a successful preservation plan. But again, if all of this doesn't pull through and things fall through the cracks in terms of it not being able to work out financially for this interested investor by that June 1st deadline, we just want you to be aware that the approval tonight would be for demolition of the Hammer Saloon. So as I've referenced before, we do have 4 primary standards that at least one of them have to be met in order for a demolition to be approved. So one of them is retention of the resource constitutes a hazard to public safety that cannot be eliminated by economic means available to the owner, and so forth. The only standard or primary standard that's applicable to the request tonight is preservation of the resource as a deterrent to a major improvement program that will be of substantial benefit to the community. So that has to do with this redevelopment plan. So the concept plan has been approved by our city council already, and they've already expressed their favor in terms of this development plan and see it as a major benefit to the community in terms of the demographic that they're serving. So in terms of a primary standard being met, standard B is the one that kind of pulls through on this instance. So in terms of where we're at in terms of staff and what has come through, so compared to 2004 when we did deny a demolition permit, they did not have any redevelopment plan or development plan in place or proposed at that time. So this is a little different where we do have a development plan in place, a developer who has a time schedule in terms of when they're planning to move ground. So it does make this request different tonight in terms of evaluation. So again, as I've said before, our city council has expressed their favor in terms of this project moving forward, as it will be a major improvement or redevelopment plan for the city. So as I've identified in a couple slides back in terms of the work that's been done and the work that is still yet to be done, and the fact that the developer has shown efforts in terms of finding an alternative and trying to preserve the structure, we believe that this route is a comfortable route and an appropriate route to go in terms of how to address the Hammer Saloon. So we do have someone who's interested. It's very viable that they might be able to make this happen, and if it does, then I believe all parties are happy in the end. And we can also give a clear indication to the developer too in terms of a timetable that they can work with to still stay on schedule with their development. So with that being said, we are asking you to make a motion tonight to approve the site alteration permit request for demolition of the Hammer Saloon home at 1092 Cardinal Street based on the following finding and conditions. So based on the finding that the demolition is necessary for a major improvement that is of substantial benefit to the community, and based on the conditions that the demolition of the Hammer Saloon and home will not occur before June 1st of 2019. A condition that Pulte Homes will still work in good faith with reputable entities desiring to take ownership of the home and to restore the home. Pulte Homes will strive to come to a written agreement with such entity with terms acceptable to both parties. The end goal of such agreement is to transfer ownership of the home and a small accompanying lot to such entity. Another condition, if such agreement is executed by both parties, then Pulte Homes will create a legal lot beneath the home which meets city standards and has sewer and water services extended to the lot for free. Such entity will take ownership of the home and lot if the party has obtained a site alteration permit from the HPC for improving at least the exterior of the home by June 1st, 2019, and if all other terms of the Pulte entity agreement have been satisfied. And then lastly, if the Pinnacle development plan does not proceed forward altogether, or Pulte Homes does not obtain a grading permit by June 1st, 2019, then this demolition request and approval, if approved tonight, will become null and void after that time. Any new demolition request will require a separate site alteration permit reviewed by the HPC, including any separate requests by the Hammers family. So this is very specific to kind of what they're providing tonight. They are asking for a demolition permit request, but they are also making that contingent upon still working with an interested investor. And if that's able to work out by June 1st, 2019, then all will be well. If not, if no preservation plan is put in place by that time, then they are able to demolish the home. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
I do have a
regarding-
clarification
Sure.
request. For
Yep.
the second bullet, it says to transfer ownership of the home and a small accompanying lot. Could you clarify again, just to make sure I understand what's a small accompanying lot mean?
Basically, a lot that's going to be able to provide the home with compliance setbacks and whatever else in terms of the end use
It's a
of,
destination for the home?
yes,
Okay.
yep, yep. So it's not just kind of leaving it off in the wind.
Good luck with that.
They're going to sanction off something that's legal in terms of where the home can be placed.
Anyone have any questions or?
That was actually one of my questions, and it was answered, so.
Nicely written. Thank you.
I know the applicant, Paul Hoyer, is in the audience, and he also has a little bit of a presentation to give to you as well, so I'm going to open it up to him unless you guys have additional questions for me.
No?
I'm going to switch it over then.
Please do, Paul.
Good evening again. You've seen enough of my presentation, so I cut it down to really
Welcome
short.
back.
You guys are like family now. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly review some of the steps we took and kind of give you a summary at the end here. So we did the historical survey, which hadn't been done previously, and that was really eye-opening for us because none of us really knew the condition of the home and the historical value. So that was a big step that we've taken. We, of course, did the tour on that beautiful, warm winter day out there. We've had correspondence with a house mover to learn what we could about that option. We've done a pretty thorough evaluation of how this home could be used within the new neighborhood and found that really totally impractical. And we've had a fair amount of correspondence with this interested investor at the back of the room here to try to coordinate and see if there might be a way that we could find a win-win-win scenario. And our findings, a survey wasn't done initially, so this home was placed on the list without a survey, and I still believe there's a great chance that it would not have ever been on the register if a survey would have been done at that time. But nevertheless, survey results turned out that it was in pretty poor condition, as you saw, and a lot of the historical, past architectural, integrity had been changed. And the adaptive reuse, as I said, isn't workable. So the solution we came up with, we worked hard with staff to try to craft the right kinds of conditions so that it kind of pigeonholes this thing. I realize the irony of saying this, but what we're asking you to do tonight is to approve a demolition permit for this home. And I believe by approving this demolition permit, that is your best chance of preserving the home. It's very ironic, but I think it's very true. We are not allowed to take our next steps with the Planning Commission and City Council. We cannot submit our neighborhood plan to the city until we have a demolition permit. So without this, everything stops. We go away. And I wonder what will happen to the house if we go away. You have a moment before you, which is, I think, very unique, where you have a developer that's willing to give the home in a lot of way and to work with somebody to preserve the home. You also have an interested investor that she's been great to work with. And she also has been trying to make this work for us and for the city. And clearly she's reputable, very impressive. So you've got this moment in front of you, and I realize the irony of asking you to approve a demolition permit, but that is the solution to make this all happen. So I just wanted to point that out, because I don't think we've ever really said out loud how ironic this is, but it's a fact. So that's all I have tonight. I'm asking you to approve it.
Anyone have any further questions? Now, your last presentation was very thorough, and the tour was very thorough.
Thank you.
So I don't have any more
And
questions.
having the investor come forward, I think, presents us with a better opportunity than what we had before, so.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Kirsten, would you like to speak at all about the project?
No, I'm good. Thank you. And I'm eyeing my time because I think the videos are running out at about that 24-minute mark, so excuse me. No, I think I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been wonderful to work with Liz, and Paul's been amazing, and I've had some great meetings here at the city already, and I've learned a lot about the process in...
Coming for some help.
24 minutes is up.
I know what I'm doing. So I think this is such a passion project at this point that I'm really invested, and I've said many times, if we can just make it work. My estimate is $250,000 to make it amazing, and it's such a drop in the bucket for the 10, 20, 30-year plan of getting this viable and having the community see value in the property. I said in our last meeting, I own an old home. I have spent 5.5 years hooking up to city water, replacing windows. The roof is next year. I put footings in a house. I've cemented the basement. I have a stacked stone foundation. I mean, I know what there is to go wrong in a house of this vintage, and I am not daunted in the least, and I know how to make a home of this vintage valuable to others. And so this is my wheelhouse, and I'm actually so excited. It's been keeping me up at night with ideas, and so I just would love it so much, and I would love to hear what color it was eons ago, and to make it happen. And so it's just a matter of how to make that drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things work for somebody for whom it's not a drop in the bucket, but I think it's feasible. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for considering, and again, thank you for everyone who's had conversations with me, because I think it's a crazy path my life has taken in just 5 weeks. But it's pretty exciting.
I'm amazed. I compliment both of you for working together with the city and getting this package together so quickly.
Yeah, compared
They're,
to the last time, we're all like, oh, there's nothing we can do, and then all of a sudden this, and it's like,
Yeah.
great.
Kirsten, what's your vision for the use of it now? 5 weeks later, whatever.
I know, it's definitely you run the gamut, and everyone I've talked to in my community gets their own vision of what it would be cool to do. But I think at the core of it, it's best suited as a residence in the short term at a minimum. There's no sense in putting $500,000 into it for a commercial kitchen and suddenly it's a saloon again or something like that. I think residential use, bringing it to a place of value in the short term makes the absolute most sense, just to keep it alive. Let's just get it to that point where it's okay. Then the 3 to 5 year plan is really about paying off the investment that was made to make it that way. And so if that is a rental situation where it can just be making some income to pay back the investment, if it's a short-term rental in the sense of a bed and breakfast type Airbnb type of situation where you could open it up to the community, so there's more traffic in the home to see the history, to see how it was made. Even a sense of other kinds of business opportunities have been inquired of me, such as seasonal sales, or how can you rent out the space to these other interests on a short-term basis for a different business purpose that still retains the residential quality. I've had a lot of ideas, but again, I think it needs to be profitable in 2 years. End of story, and then from there we could grow a little. But that's at least my incremental vision.
Any questions? It's pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. Thank you. Thank you again. We didn't read it. I didn't read your entire package, just received it yesterday, but I will.
Yeah.
We'll look at it. Looks like
It's
a
a lot of my,
work. And good luck. So the next step is for both parties to get a written agreement. And that's where a lot of my questions lie. How's this going to happen? And boy, and pray for that success.
We have often compared it to a lot of people advancing toward the same finish line, and if anybody falters, the rest don't make it to the end either. And so that's a difficult place, even for my own position, to go forward and achieve my own sense of financing when it's all a bit of a bubble that could become real really fast and then have some very real deadlines. It would be wonderful to have clarity and have those things established in writing.
Oh, great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If there might be nothing necessary, I may take the children in the back away from this meeting, and then you will know how to get a hold of me.
Yeah,
Anything is
we
needed.
have the connection here.
Okay.
But, we have to talk and decide and all that. If it's approved, congratulations on working hard and finding something that's probably great for our community.
If it is approved, you will see me a lot. So,
Well, thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for bringing the kids out. That's
Civic lessons, it's all in my grand plan.
great. Well, thank you, Kirsten. This is a public hearing. So now we'd like to open up at 7:30 p.m. Open up to anyone else in the room that would like to speak on this issue. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak on this issue? All right, well, everyone in the audience who wants to speak has spoken. So this time we're going to close the public hearing at 7:31 p.m. So now back to the commission. Would anyone like any more questions, any more discussion in your mind? I've got a couple of little questions, but.
And just a comment, this home has not been upkept for so many years. If we don't do something with it, it will be beyond saving anymore within the next couple of years.
I would agree, and to see that this type of plan came up in just the last month, whatever, makes me really happy because we were kind of at the end of our rope as what to do. So.
Yeah, a couple things impacted me in thinking about this. One, Ms. Hanson, I don't know how you pulled off our field trip, but that was really important. And all the work that was done by the applicant was really, really important. But that field trip we got a lot of data there. And I also appreciate, again, the message last commission meeting, talking more emotionally about the value of the property and being able to connect with someone in the community.
would you,
Can you come up to the podium?
do we have to
Can you come up to the podium? They're not going to be able to hear
Liz,
you.
do we have to reopen? Because we,
No, you don't.
please,
No.
just, please come and state your name and your address, sir, again.
Jim Hammers, so this is my great-grandfather's house. The picture of the saloon is not the saloon that was in that building down here in Chaska called the Hammer Building. And there used to be a saloon in that, which became known then as the Hammers Saloon. And that's the picture of the saloon that was in town here.
Okay.
So I don't want the applicant to think that she's going to try and put that somehow into her plans. And the other thing is that I think the house, you have the house built in 1873, and there is reason to believe that it might have been, it was originally owned by John Lee, who was one of the very first people who built in Chaska, and he built the first brick house in town here. But before that, he had to live somewhere, and that was his property on the top of the hill up there. So the house could actually go back to about 1857 rather than 1873. So I mean, a little wording there, before 1873 rather than at 1873. They'd be more accurate. So, but I'm glad that we're coming up with a solution for the place.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So kind of reclose again and bring it back here. One question I have, I'm not a lawyer, but this is a public meeting. Anyone who wants to come and speak of this, it's been in the public record for months. I assume, or I'm asking, are there any other requirements for public notification that this property is available? Kirsten is going to work with the developer to come to an agreement, but are we, because of the nature of the public hearing, are we all set, Ms.
We
Hanson?
are, yep. So by state statute, for a site alteration permit request, we're required to notify the properties within a 350-foot radius around the subject site. So they're given notification about the meeting and a public hearing being held tonight. So that's the requirement that we're upheld to proceed with. So in terms of requirements being met, they're all being met.
I have no further questions. Anyone else down the line?
I'm good.
Okay, is the moment here. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the site alteration permit for demolition of the historic Hammer Saloon at 1092 Cardinal Street based on the finding and conditions listed in the staff report? Do we have a motion?
I'll motion it.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Seconded. All in favor of approving this?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone against it? No. So the vote carries. Motion's approved. Congratulations. And thanks for your patience of working with with this potential investor here. It'll be very, very cool. And the words that were written here, I don't know who wrote those words, but it works. To me, it's a spirit in a letter that you're going to really work together to try to figure out with her how this can be. And that's really, really, really good. So that's the end on this issue.
Can I get a clarification on who seconded, who made the second motion? You did, Kelly. Okay, thank you. All right.
So we're ready to move to action number 7B, to review a concept plan for the S-Lot Ernst Home development at 217 and 211 Walnut Street. Liz, if you can educate us again, we appreciate it.
You guys all situated? Getting to it? It starts with the meeting memo if you're trying to locate it in the packet. So thank you again, members of the HPC. Tonight we're looking at a concept plan coming forward through the city for the S-Lot and Ernst Home. They're both located on Walnut Street. So to give you an idea of where these sites are located, if you can remember where the fire occurred in 2014 at the Joseph S. House and subsequently was demolished, there's a vacant lot right on Walnut Street. where we consider it the S lot. And then, if you can remember, the Reedley house, also known as the Ernst home, got relocated to this lot to the south of that. And there's a city-owned parking lot just south of that site as well. So this is within the Walnut Street Historic District, which is a national district. And there's basically a gap in that district that we're looking at tonight as a part of the Ernst home that's there today. So to kind of go over the background again, so in 2014 is kind of when all of this came into motion. The Fireman's Park project was a major redevelopment project identified by the city. And within that site was the structure of the Ernst home there, also known as the Reedley home. So during that redevelopment portion and trying to figure out what to do with the historic structure that was on the site, it was determined to relocate the Ernst home to a different location within the city. So that's when, so it was roughly around the 2015-2016 timeframe that the Ernst home was relocated to help aid in that redevelopment effort at the Fireman's Park. Also in 2014, at the end of the year, a fire did cause extreme damage to the S house, which subsequently came to its demolition in 2017. The city did take ownership of the S house in hopes of trying to obtain grant money from the state to try to preserve it. So we did go through 2 grant cycles as a part of those efforts, which were both unsuccessful at the state level. So because we were not able to obtain the necessary funds to preserve the structure, we did come through with a demolition permit on that home. So since that time, since the Ernst home was relocated to 211 Walnut Street and the demolition of the S home on the S lot, since that time, we have been marketing the site, since the city does own it, to be redeveloped and reused. So both have been sitting vacant since that time. So tonight, we are coming forward with a plan kind of showcasing a potential reuse of both those sites in an appropriate manner. One thing I also do want to touch on too, since the Ernst home basically was relocated from a locally designated area and it is still a local designated home, it is moving into a national district, the Walnut Street District. So as a part of this plan kind of moving forward, we have engaged architecture firm and consultant who specializes in history and historic preservation to explore the potential of getting the Ernst home onto the contributing list for the Walnut Street District. In doing so, that would open a lot of doors in terms of financial incentives that are available through the state, which would help aid in this project moving forward. So 211 Walnut Street, this is the lot that encompasses the Ernst home, also known as the Reedley house. Before that, there was an older residence there that was demolished to basically make way for this new home to be placed on. So the Ernst home was built in 1884 by Andreas Reedley on the Fireman's Park site. It is a Chaska brick home, a T-plan cross-wing type floor plan, and has had great significance in terms of its architecture and the history that it's provided to the city. And then talking about the late S home at 217 Walnut Street, it was built in 1886 by Joseph S. It was also a Chaska brick home, but was ultimately covered by stucco, so you didn't get to see that notion after that occurred. And then due to the significant fire in 2014, it was demolished in 2017. So tonight's request and what we're looking at tonight, so I just want to preface by saying that you're not making any motion on this tonight. It's purely meant to provide information to you, for you to react and provide feedback to the applicant. So they are in here tonight with a concept plan. So it's first coming to you guys to get that feedback. They'll subsequently go through Planning Commission and City Council to get that concept plan approved, but want to make sure you're a part of the equation in terms of when they come back for preliminary and ultimately a site alteration permit for the site. So they are asking to redevelop the S lot and to restore the home on the Ernst lot at 217 and 211 Walnut Street. So specifically what they're requesting tonight is for 7 rental apartment units. 3 different buildings are a part of that request. So two apartment units would be located in the Ernst home, one on the bottom floor, one on the top floor. There will be a 3-unit townhome building proposed on the S lot, just north of the Ernst home. And then 2 units are being proposed above a new parking garage that is in the rear or westerly portion of the site. So I'll show that on a site plan pretty quickly here. So again, we're just trying to get your direction tonight, your initial feedback and reaction on what they're proposing. So the applicant has provided a couple different plans, a part of their concept plan. This is showing the existing conditions of the site today. So the Ernst home is basically on the 211 Walnut Street lot. Basically has a 13.5 front setback from their property line. The S lot is basically vacant after that demolition occurred in 2017. And then this also shows the city-owned parking lot to the south of this site. And then when you layer on basically what they're proposing, so the Ernst home is staying in the exact same location that it is today. There is a 3-unit townhome building proposed just to the north of the Ernst home, which is basically separated by a sidewalk in between the Ernst home and this proposed building. The parking garage is proposed on the rear or western portion of the site, which will provide an interior parking stall for each unit proposed on this site. And then they're also proposing a surface parking lot just westerly of that parking garage as well for the units. Just a zoomed in perspective of kind of the breakup of those units again. They haven't quite gotten to the floor plan for the townhome or the above the parking garage units yet, but for the Ernst home, they have provided an initial layout of how the bottom floor and the top floor are going to be utilized for those apartments. So the bottom floor will basically be a 1-bedroom unit. It's the only unit as a part of the apartments that will be 1 bedroom only. All the other units will be 2 bedrooms. So this will gain access from the first story from the front porch and even in the rear area. The second unit in the Ernst home would basically gain access from the exterior via a staircase that'll bring it up to the second level and provide access into that apartment. Another thing that the developer has put together is 2 different renditions of the townhome building next to the Ernst home. So this is kind of where your voice tonight is going to be very important in terms of kind of what your guidance is and your reaction is to these different drawings that they've provided. So the first one is option A, more of a residential look, consistent with kind of what you see at the Ernst house, the gabled roof. And then option B is more of a contemporary residential building that you might see in downtown Minneapolis or so forth. So they're trying to get your reaction kind of with these 2 different options. It doesn't necessarily mean that option A is, that's the set design of it. So if there's pieces that you like about it or about option B even, that you can let the developer know tonight in terms of how they can proceed forward. I think in terms of a staff analysis of this so far, which I'll get into a little bit more, but option A does lend itself to be more compatible with its context, the Ernst home and the national district that it's locating in due to some of the qualities that you see on these historic homes and buildings within the area. So I did want to point out a couple standards, which will definitely get more delved into this during a site alteration permit, but ones that I do want to mention as a part of this concept plan for new construction. So just wanted to note a couple of those matters and standards that we look at to evaluate new construction within historic districts and for historically designated properties. So the first one is matter 4B from our ordinance for heritage preservation. The general compatibility of the architectural style, arrangement, texture, color, arrangement of color, and materials used on existing and proposed structures with the character of the historic resource in its site or the historic district. So this is basically kind of talking about how does this new construction or even alteration fit in with what's currently there or notable to the historic district. So we're still at a very conceptual stage with the applicant, and we'll certainly continue to work with them to get them to a point where the details and the elevations will fit in well with the architectural style that's out there. I think we have an initial reaction to the options that we've provided in terms of option A being more compatible, but there's definitely pieces to still work out so that it becomes a beautiful addition to the area. Another standard to point out, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize the property. The new work will be differentiated from the old and will be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion, and massing to protect the integrity of the property and its environment. So kind of based on what they provided for a site plan, the spatial relationship is definitely an important element that we have to look at as a part of these site alteration permit requests. So I think, you know, the point that the applicant has gotten to is definitely going in the right direction. I think before we've contemplated potentially attaching these two buildings, but did not see that as an appropriate direction to go. So the fact that they're separating the buildings is definitely a plus and will help provide a spatial relationship that once was there with the S house. So they are showing something that's very reminiscent of what was there and consistent kind of with the fabric of this district. So they are showing a setback that's consistent with the Ernst House, so they're not putting it in a way that it's obstructing views of the Ernst House or making it stand out in a adverse manner within the district as a whole. And I think the same can be said for the parking garage in the rear. It's providing a spatial relationship that does seem appropriate for these buildings. And in terms of kind of what they're proposing for the overall design, so the new work will be differentiated from the old. They are going to utilize a Chaska brick blend on the newer townhome building, which has always been a staff recommendation for anything in downtown Chaska. It's merely just about getting the blend right and the color right so that it stands or doesn't stand out as an awkward sore thumb within a certain area. So that's something that will obviously work with the applicant as we kind of get through this process and get to more detailed specs as we get to preliminary and finals of this project. So with that, that will provide a piece that is compatible with what's existing out there. The new work will definitely still have some contemporary pieces to it to differentiate it from the historic structures out there, but there's also that opportunity to provide details that are compatible and reminiscent of Chaska downtown qualities. And then lastly, standard D10, new additions and adjacent or related new construction will be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment would not be impaired or would be unimpaired. So the fact that the buildings are not attached to each other or attached to the Ernst home does give it that opportunity that in the event that either of those buildings do go away, they don't have any physical impact on the Ernst home. So I think based on kind of what they're proposing tonight is definitely a good start, and there are pieces that we can work out together through the process. So I've kind of touched on a couple of these already, but just some pieces that I've mentioned in our meeting memo in terms of the overall design of what they're proposing. So as I've mentioned, option A tends to be more of a compatible direction. Again, pieces on there may be tweaked to kind of get what the applicant is looking for, but also there might be opportunities to provide details that are present in downtown Chaska, specifically as it relates to kind of window profiles and brick details that you see on downtown buildings. So again, those are things that we can kind of work with the applicant on as they move forward. Another piece that's important to note is this notion of Paseo that has been highlighted in our downtown master plan. So the alleyway that's behind the homes that the lot basically gains access from has been designated as a Paseo opportunity.
As a what? I'm sorry.
A Paseo opportunity. So basically, what we mean by that is it will be more of a pedestrian-friendly route for people to take as opposed to going down Highway 41. So there is this notion that this alleyway might be a pedestrian thoroughfare that they could potentially use. So being able to provide an aesthetically pleasing edge for the buildings that face that backside is something that we are advising and encouraging as new developments or new alterations occur within that area. So we do make that comment of the backside of this lot be able to provide 360-degree architecture to provide that aesthetically pleasing thoroughfare for pedestrians. That could be done with the architecture, but also landscaping as well on that edge. So that'll be another piece that we'll continue to work with the applicant on. So again, we're not making any formal motions tonight, so we are asking for your feedback on the concept plan that's being presented tonight. And I've kind of bullet pointed a couple things that you can use as discussion points. By no means do you need to utilize only these bullet points, so if you have any other comments, questions, or whatever, feel free to kind of voice those. But the 3 points are just talking about the overall look that they've been able to give in both those options, and then the spatial relationship of what they're proposing for the new construction next to the Ernst home. And then whether or not you feel that the use that they're proposing in terms of a rental apartment use is appropriate for the structure and the overall site. And then if there's anything specific that you'd like to see as a part of their formal site alteration permit request as that comes down in the near to late future. So again, this is not the first and last time you'll be seeing this. You'll be seeing this another time. So anything that you wish to see in the future, please express that tonight. We do have the applicants in the audience tonight, one from the architecture firm U+B, and then also Laura Russ with Talley and Associates, who's basically the applicant and developer. So if you have any questions for me, let me know. Otherwise, I'll invite them up and let them speak.
For reference, could you put the slide that shows the 2 versions,
Yep.
option 1 and 2
Yep.
back, and then invite the applicants up?
And this will not affect Clearsoft at all? The
No.
business to the north? Okay.
Nope. There's a clear setback between the 2 buildings and properties.
Trying to
so.
visualize it.
I finally locked it in.
Is there any conceptual plan for the 2 apartments above the parking?
They don't have an elevation drawing for that quite yet, only kind of a rectangular format of what they're
So
doing back there.
the west windows on that apartment would overlook the Paseo,
Right,
and they would enter, coming up the stairway from the parking garage into the 2 apartments?
yes, so they have, well,
On each
actually, this
side.
might be a better picture. So the 2 apartment units will gain access through their own interior staircase from the rear or from the exterior. So that's basically attached to that parking garage, so they'll go up and be able to access their units that way.
So the 2 on each end are for everybody's access to the,
Just for the people who own those apartment units on top.
what about the 3, how do the 3 people in the,
They have external doors in their garages.
So they all have their own doorway and stoop from the front and the
Okay.
rear.
I'm just, are we missing one picture here?
Well, I can certainly let Nate, the architect,
Invite the
kind of
applicants
delve
up,
into the
yeah.
details with you guys.
Good evening, hi. I'm Laura Russ, I'm the applicant, and this is Nate Golan. He's with U+B, who's also the architecture firm that's working on the Klein Mansion and the delivery. So we've partnered because when we saw this project, we were just really excited with the potential to have an impact right in the core of Chaska, and really to provide a product that does not exist right now, which is newer, kind of urban-style housing relying on the history and architecture of Chaska. So we're really excited about it. But it is a unique product for us as developers and also for applicants. So we've worked through a lot of different site plans. Although it's a small site, it's more challenging than it looks. So we'd be happy to walk you through more and take any questions. But Liz did a great job of explaining all the key pieces. I think as you kind of get your orientation with it, the main thing is that it's 3 distinct buildings, so none of them are connected. So in terms of access, the access on the carriage house units, each stairwell is unique to that unit. Part of our thought with that is to reduce the amount of common space to maintain. We manage and own our apartments, and it's really important to us that we create spaces that are manageable and that are not going to, given that's a small project, there would not be an 24-hour-a-day person on site. So it was important to us to try to create less common space, so there's just less clutter in the hallways or trash in the green space, and to create more private entries and private spaces. So that's the reason for the 2 units on the carriage house style, and then also the private yards. So the 3 townhomes in front, those, as was said, have their own entrance in the front, and then would have access through the backyard also.
So all these sites are on the same ground level
Correct.
as far as entrance into?
Correct, right.
And do the same outward appearances for the 2 apartments there would be similar to like a Chaska brick exterior or something?
So we have not yet developed that, but it's certainly our goal to keep the concept consistent. I mean, that's a variable in terms of cost as well, and looking at that, but that would be something we'd be happy to get your feedback on. Do you want to add?
Yeah, no,
anything to that?
and I think just to reiterate some of the things that Liz was saying is that at this point, we're really just begun the discussion with the city about this property. It's really a very initial exploration. What we did here, just for sake of being efficient, was to focus on what we anticipated being the most important aspect of the property, and that is that facade on Walnut Street, making sure that we're providing something that is appropriate to the Ernst House, and then also appropriate to that kind of walkable side of that street. So our expectation is that we get further into this, that we will be definitely spending a lot of time on that on that carriage house. As you know, Liz mentioned, it's a very exposed building, so we certainly don't anticipate treating it like an afterthought. It's as present a building, even from Walnut Street, as the townhomes are. And so our anticipation is that we're going to be looking at this thing quite in the same way and detailed way that we've looked at the townhomes. I'm kind of interested in it. It's kind of a interesting model. Certainly something that's appropriate for the vintage, being carriage house with having those kind of garage units and then the apartment units above. So I'm kind of excited about getting into those details. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Could you show us the option 1 and 2 again? I was curious what the reaction everyone was.
So, and again, I guess I have to say, well, this is very early on. We haven't got to the point where we've laid out the units as Liz mentioned for those townhomes. It's more or less to, we like options, as Laura mentioned. We went probably through 15 different site plan options for this, and so throwing things out and seeing what sticks is kind of our mantra here. So as we develop the plans more, it will certainly adjust. I think our thought throughout was that using something, using a Chaska brick blend was kind of foundational to this, and the interpretation of using a flat roof or something of sloped roof. I think there's precedent, obviously, in the commercial downtown district to say, okay, well, maybe we should try flat roofs and see if there's some kind of a bridge between that residential and commercial side. I certainly agree that the sloped roof version is a little bit more deferential to the Ernst House. So in my opinion, frankly, that's my preference as well. There is a certain amount of efficiency in the blockier shapes where more of that square footage of that townhome is usable. However, that's going to be a balance, is what efficiency versus the appropriateness of that elevation.
Anyone want to express views on A versus B? Or
Well,
what?
I was looking at option B, and you can almost get that closer to look like the townhouses that are further north on Walnut Street.
Absolutely, and those townhomes were, given its location to the Klein Mansion, we're very familiar with those as well. And again, it's the kind of rhythm of those elements is something that has precedent in downtown Chaska as well. And that's really what we were thinking about in that option B is, okay, the Ernst House has this very kind of defined mass of the elevation. Is that, can we use that mass to create kind of a kind of rhythm on the facade?
It just is a gut. The B looks like an institution.
It reminds me of my college apartments.
Yeah, it looks like an institution. A looks warmer, more welcoming. Historic preservation side and all that looks more welcoming. Me to A, but
Yeah, we don't want to be Minneapolis.
yeah, it's neat. It's neat that the registration, application, preserving the home. I like the idea of creating more homes in town, hopefully preserving, because we got businesses and stuff going on, and it's neat that people can live near those businesses that are being.
Yeah, we're very excited about the kind of urban aspect of this, is because there's so many amenities that are downtown. I mean, I can imagine these being very attractive to a lot of people that would want to live in downtown Chaska. So it's certainly something we're excited about.
Well, and to be able to have a streetscape that connects the commercial district with the town's center is really going to connect that in a nice way with people that are there 24 hours and using the commercial and using the park. So that was, I mean, we're primarily residential developers, so we pursued it, really for that intention, but I think that it will be something, whether you live there or whether you're just enjoying the view of it, that will feel like it belongs and connects those.
Yeah, Ms. Hanson, you asked, what do we want to know? I'm kind of hooking up to my peer here. Sure, it'd be nice as this develops to see more of the views and what's that back really looking like. And because I was a little confused too about those stairs on the end. I wasn't sure like why are those there? Whether they going up or down? But I know you're early still. Is there a target? Like we hope this project gets approved and we have homes built in. Like what's a timeline looking?
Well, as Liz indicated, we're simultaneously pursuing the historic process with the state, so the timeline will depend a lot on kind of how all these pieces come together. It's possible as that moves forward that, there may be kind of a cost-benefit analysis where, we still are doing the plan as it is, but it doesn't no longer make sense to actually get that historic designation just because it can limit, what we do on the inside. It may, and we're only talking about the house, and so it's a relatively small portion of the whole site. But we're hopeful that we can move forward, and it's certainly our intention to, do whatever would be required to make it historical anyway. It's designated that way. But so there are a lot of different moving parts with this, and we're moving forward with the concept plan this month, and then it will really be the detail for the preliminary. Ideally, next summer to fall, we would be able to move forward, but, surveys, soil testing, environmental reviews, those things are all to be done, so it's hard to say right now.
Do you have like a target audience or type of, is it renters or is it?
Yeah, it would all be rentals. So, and as I said, we're long-term owners and managers, so we aim to build things that are manageable and would be managed well. And so that, as I said, played into how we thought about the site design. And, they'd be 1,200 square foot units, so smaller than some of the offerings in the suburban developments, but again, more full of the amenities that are available downtown. So that might appeal to empty nesters or to newer households. We could definitely see a lot of dogs here with the private yards, so there might be a mix of people attracted. But our goal, again, really is to provide something that, you may have a long-term homeowner couple in some of the suburban areas of Chaska that wants to stay in Chaska but no longer wants a home, wants to move in, be able to walk to more, use their car a little bit less. And that's not something that is easily available to residents who are looking for that type of option.
If you're looking for feedback, mine is I'm very positive about what you're doing here. I think it's a great potential use of the property, and I'm excited to see it be residential. I am more in favor of option A than option B. I still think it may need a little bit of tweaking, but I kind of agree that the B is a little bit more institutional and aesthetically pleasing. I think option A, or some modification that is. But my feedback is I'm anxious to see the next step.
We are too.
Same sentiment.
Yeah, I'm kind of attached to the Ernst house, so.
Would this
I'd like
be
to see.
handicapped accessible at all?
The first floor of the Ernst house would
Yeah.
be the unit that would be handicap accessible on the site. Obviously, the townhomes, the first floor would, those would be accessible as well. But as far as a complete unit, it would be that first floor of the Ernst house.
Oh, I see where there's a need for empty nesters, retirees.
Downsizers.
I lived at the River Gables for 6 months. This is my last day here. I moved to another city, so I enjoyed living there while we were building our new house, but I see a lot of them, they lost a spouse, they wanted to downsize, they didn't want a big house anymore. I see where there's a need for the adult living. This place that I lived did not allow children. I mean, grandchildren or kids could be, welcome on the weekends, for a visit, or weeknights or weekdays, but it wasn't allowed there. So I got to meet a lot of the residents and got to hear their, what is needed downtown. Another thing is that a lot of them feel stuck there. They can't get around. They can't drive anymore. They have walkers. You might want to think of something, maybe something that will help the retirees so they can get around and not feel confined to one building. So
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. Yeah, it's just to clarify, this is definitely not specifically designated for any demographic, but
Right.
it would be an open or, family and
Another-
all building. But I think your points are well taken, that it's really, sometimes when certain demographics are looking for housing and it's just hard for them to find something that will suit their needs. And given the
Right.
proximity to all of the core of Chaska, already you take away a lot of the barriers by just making everything more accessible, so.
Right.
Any more questions or input?
No, I think it looks pretty cool.
It's neat. Good luck pushing it through. Anxious to see it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that moves to item 8, other business. Any other business? I've got 1.5 other business items.
1.5?
Yeah. Well, one business item, I want to thank Ms. Hanson here. This is my first year on the commission. You've done an extremely great job, in my view, my opinion. We're always ready. Presentations are thorough, things make sense, you coach us well, and all that. I appreciate what you're putting in this, because it's obvious you're doing a lot of work to prepare for successful and effective meetings, so thank you.
Welcome, thank you.
And what number, item 2 is, you're leaving us?
Unfortunately, this is my last meeting.
Bailed on us, Mr. Carver.
I've been with
It was too stressful.
I've been with the commission 2 years, so I thank City Council for allowing me to be on the commission, and it's been a pleasure working with you, and I hope, be watching what projects you'll be working on. I'll check the website, and I want to thank Elizabeth, and so it's been enjoyable. I learned a lot about Chaska, especially the history and meeting new people. And I had the chance to live downtown for 6 months, and that was learning the history that way too.
Best place to live.
So, yeah, it's sad to leave, but I'm not going to be too far from Chaska, so thank you.
Well, any other thing on your minds to close out for the year 2018 in the books? Wow,
I'm good.
cool. Well, if there's nothing else, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn the last meeting of 2018?
I'll motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? No, this meeting is adjourned.